Welcome, I'm Paul, this is Dave. You're watching my channel's weekly compendium, ending Monday, September 16th, 2024. Enjoy. Case file number 1829, written by Bean Barrage. A story of keys, cars, and unseen men. I got up and got ready for work. I'm driving my normal route, and about 35 minutes into my drive, I missed my exit due to a weird traffic instance where I just couldn't get over in time. No big deal. I continue on and just let my GPS recalculate. I like using my GPS regardless of knowing the route because it gives good insights into the traffic patterns and ETA, things like that. It recalculates to the next exit and even saves a couple of minutes. I was like, oh nice, maybe I just found a secret shortcut to work. So at this point, I blindly follow the GPS as I am unfamiliar with a lot of the route at this point, and I drive for another 20 to 25 minutes or so. This is when it gets weird. I come up on a road that seems familiar to me for some reason. I discount the feeling because of the off chance maybe I had been there before. I then turn onto the road and realize that I'm on a road that connects to the road to my house. I've never gone this way because I've never had a reason to. I think, wow, this is weird. How did I get turned around like that? So at this point, I know I'm going to be late, so I call my boss and let him know I made a mistake. I decide I might as well stop in my house to let my dogs out quickly and go to the bathroom. This is the weirdest part. As I approach my house, I look in the driveway and my heart sinks. My car is in the driveway, same license plate and everything. That's when I look down at the steering wheel and realize I'm driving my wife's car. I pull in the driveway and walk in the house. My wife was confused to see me because she knew I left for work not long ago. I was surprised to see that she was awake because she works the night shift at the hospital. I asked her if she, by chance, saw me take her keys out of her purse to drive her car that day. She reaches into her purse and pulls out her keys out of her purse. I reach my hand in my pocket and pull out my keys. How was I driving her car with my keys? Our cars are very different, but the fobs are similar. I again discounted it as a weird mix-up and hop back in my car to go to work this time. I update my boss and let him know the situation. I got on the road and this time I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss my exit. As I'm approaching the same exit I missed last time, I see emergency vehicles lining the road, and the exit is closed. There was a car crash on the exit involving a semi-truck. The car that was in the accident was the same make and model as my car. I found this to be very spooky. Again, I'm forced to drive a different route to work, and at this point, I'm very flustered. I call my boss yet again and just update him, and he says, "No worries, you should still be able to make it in time for the meeting." I look at my clock, and it's as if I was on time. How? I called my wife just to confirm I was home a while ago. She said that I wasn't home, but she couldn't find her keys anywhere. I was starting to freak out. I checked my phone's previous calls and texts to my boss and there was nothing. I never called or texted him. Do I need to go to the doctor? An update. My wife found her keys. They were in my work pants that I wore the day before. Asked my boss for a mental health day because the experience has been very unsettling. I spoke with my boss about the experience, and he said that I have the day off to figure some stuff out. Yes, he is a very cool boss. This is what I've found out. More questions than answers, really. I tried to find any news regarding the accident I saw. I've been looking up the exit and interstate to see if I can pinpoint who was in the accident, because it didn't look survivable. Nothing. I cannot find anything on the accident, and it's been eating me up. I mapped my route and traced the exit that I thought I took. The only plausible exit that I took doesn't seem to connect or turn back around to my home in any way. It does, however, provide an alternate route to work. I haven't been back to the exit where the accident happened. I want to investigate it to see if I can see any sign of wreckage. For example, fluid stains on the road, bits of car with matching color, etc. I have somewhat of an eidetic memory, I guess, photographic memory. Usually, I can recall very specific information about an event. What someone is wearing, color of their coffee mug, etc. Things that other people usually just disregard as unimportant. That's why this part is really frustrating to me, because for the first time in my life, I cannot remember any details about the interaction with my wife. My wife is my rock, and she has been very supportive throughout this experience. I try to remember specific details about our interaction, but cannot seem to pick out any specific details like I usually would. She works the night shift as an NICU nurse, and it was her day off, so her schedule was all over the place, and thought for sure she would be sleeping when I got home, but she was awake. That I remember. The key fobs are a mystery as well, but for safe measure, I went out in the driveway and ran a test to make sure that the car would not start if I had the wrong keys, because I've heard of such things being possible with certain cars, but no luck. It didn't start. I switched cars and tested vice versa, and nothing. The only plausible explanation here is that I may have grabbed her keys from her purse after getting home unexpectedly, and then I just drove my car to work. But this doesn't explain her keys being in my work pants from the day before. She found them there before I returned home. So far I'm rationalizing it as some kind of false memory or perhaps a lucid daydream, or some sort of paracosm of disassociation, which doesn't necessarily make me feel any better. Case file number 1830, written by Anonymous. A sticker, Midnight Revelations, and a washer's secret. This happened right before New Year's Day, 2023-2024. Just a tiny note before I begin. I've never done any substances. I hadn't even had a sip of alcohol on New Year's Eve, and I am 100% mentally sound, so not a psychotic break or anything like that. I am a very rational person and studied psychology in college. I have always found a logical explanation for things in the past. I am the biggest skeptic you'll ever meet. But after I experienced this, I have no explanations. Here's the story. It was New Year's Eve, and I was messing around with my washer all day because for the first time ever, I bought it brand new, owned it for 2 years. My washer was giving me problems on that day. The comforter I'd put in it was too heavy, and it kept running error codes because of it being unbalanced, safety feature. So it kept shutting down and turning off. I ran it 3 times that day and checked it on and off all throughout the day. I even at one point sat down and recorded a funny video to send to my sister saying, I am literally going to sit in front of it and watch it till it finishes a cycle because it's not working. Another thing to note, I have a very good memory when it comes to visual things. Not a photographic memory, but I am very hyper aware of details and always pay attention to my surroundings. I know how my washer looks. It's a newer one with a stackable dryer attached on top. The brand is LG. It's known for looking aesthetically pleasing. It's black and white, and I am very OCD, so I constantly admire how nice it looks. It's one of the only things I've ever bought brand new. I clean it once a week and wipe it down. The point of all this is that I know what it looks like for a fact. I am very familiar with what I'm trying to say. You know how we go through life and sometimes we don't fully memorize something because you're just so used to seeing it? However, if something changes, your eye instantly catches it because your brain recognizes it's off. That it's not what it's used to. This is exactly what happened. I was playing video games with my friends, and midnight struck and we all celebrated the new year together via the online game. But it was time to get off and go to bed. So it was a couple minutes after New Year's Eve, now January 1st, 2024. And I go to check the washer to see if it worked yet again, to finally switch it over. I opened the closet to my washer, and my eyes were instantly drawn to an obnoxious, very noticeable green and orange sticker right below where you put the detergent. Something I would have noticed. Not a neutral tiny sticker in the upper right corner or something I could have easily missed. It's a spot where I wipe every week. A spot I would have noticed when putting detergent in. A sticker that's very ugly. It ruins the entire pretty aesthetic look of it. I would have removed it the second I got the washer. In fact, when I look at the sticker, I actually do have a memory of removing it and throwing it away when I first got the washer. I understand the false memory. This is what happens during the Mandela effect. You think you remember something, but it's really just your brain filling in information, because you never actually fully pay attention to a logo or a said object. But this is so different. My washer was blatantly and purposefully black and white and plain, because that's what I like. I made it like that on purpose. It's the whole reason I bought it in the first place. I'm very specific about that. What are the odds that one day I'm messing around with it? I'm really looking at it. If anything, wouldn't I have noticed it then? Taking videos, etc.? The second the new year hits, I open my closet door and my eyes are instantly drawn to it, and I said, that was not there before. I took a look at the videos I sent to my sister that day, and where the sticker would be. It's just out of frame, of course, so I can't see it if it were to have been there. I've told everyone in my life about it, and they all think I'm crazy. I could bet my life that sticker was not there. When I look at where the sticker was, it makes my head physically hurt. I have since removed the sticker and thrown it out, and now looking at my washer, it looks right again. Case file number 1831, written by King Coke Boy. A bracelet's illusion that I can't get past. Earlier today, I was getting dressed in my bathroom, and was wearing one of those beaded bracelets on my right wrist. I went to put my hair pomade in my hair, so I grabbed a glob of pomade, rubbed my hands together quickly, and I heard a snap, felt beads fall off my wrist, and looked down to see a quick glimpse of beads spreading out. I felt like I must have broken the bracelet I was wearing, and was really annoyed since it was loud and I heard the clicking of beads hitting the bathroom floor. I swear I saw the glimpse of beads spreading everywhere. Then I looked up at the mirror at myself like, oh damn it. My eyes were off the floor for 1 second. I dropped down to grab the beads, but suddenly couldn't see them on the floor. I felt like my wrist was naked, but then I looked at it and the bracelet was still on. I grabbed it, stretched it, took it off, put it back on. Everything looked normal. Same beads, same everything. But I know what I felt, heard, and saw. Hopefully you guys know what I mean. When you feel something break, like I felt the release of my wrist. It was very strange. I'm just confused and no, it can't be any other bracelets or beads. I have one bracelet like that, nothing else. Case file number 1832, written by Cape Monster 89. The power of knowing without a clue. When I was a kid, I sometimes just knew things. I remember driving home with my mom and sister, and when we turned the corner onto our street, I told my mom that her friend, Anne, was at our house. My street curved and we weren't in view of our house at the other end yet. I just knew she was there. My mom disagreed with me and said Anne wasn't coming over today, but I was just dead set on the fact that she was there. When we got closer, we could start to see our house. Sure enough, Anne's car was parked out front. She showed up unannounced. My father was not too happy about that, and decided to wait for a while until we arrived home, about 30 minutes or so. This was well before the days of cell phones in everyone's pockets, so he had no way to tell my mom before we got home. Another time, I was able to explain to my mom in detail what our classroom looked like. She taught English at a court reporting school. I had never been there. She was looking for something in the house, and I told her where it was in her classroom. I had been there in a dream, flying like Superman from a parking lot, through the school, and into her classroom. I told her where the posters were, that there was a small bookcase in the hallway, where she would park, and the layout of her desk, everything. When she went to work that night, the missing item was exactly where I told her it was. I was in elementary school, and this was the early 90s, so again, no cell phones. No selfie photos from her classroom, etc. I just knew. I also used to get a really strong feeling before we had earthquakes. There was a time in middle school when we had a 3+. My school was right next to a fault line, and I was under my desk ducking and covering seconds before everyone else. The alarm at school hadn't even gone off yet. And one last random thing related to the earthquakes. I once had a weird hallucination that there was earthquake damage in my house. I woke up facing my bedroom wall and saw a huge crack running from the ceiling to the floor. I rolled over in a panic to see my dresser broken. A front leg had broken off and tipped forward, with all my stuff scattered on the ground and drawers open. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and blinked a bunch. It looked the same. I started to freak out, thinking I slept through a big-as-hell earthquake, and my family forgot about me or something. I shared a room with my sister, and she wasn't there. Or that I was just crazy. Surely I would have heard or felt something that would cause that much damage. Pulled the covers over my head and closed my eyes as tight as I could for a few seconds. When I peeked out again, everything was normal. Nothing was broken, no crack in the wall, items were where they belonged. It was incredibly weird. Plus, add in that I'm a twin, and my sister and I used to do that twin thing even though we were insanely different people. We would be in different classes and know the other was upset or angry. We would accidentally dress alike when coming from different cities to meet up, etc. Good times. Case file number 1833, written by Crazy Black Cat Lady. When tape disappears and the cry rings clear. A couple years ago, my dad stayed the night at our house. Our spare room at the time had internet equipment in it, and when I was setting up the room, I put black electrical tape over the flashing lights, as they were quite obnoxious in the small room in the dark. A while later, when he was ready to go to bed, I walked in, and there was no tape. I freaked out, and my dad and husband thought I was losing my mind, pregnant and sleep deprived. I laid in bed questioning a lot of things that night, and then, terrified that my mind was going, fast forward to the next one. We all get up sitting in the living room. My husband goes to check something out of curiosity, and comes back, white as a ghost. There was the tape, slightly dusty from our slightly dusty floors, as if it had been there all night. My dad, who was very level-headed, couldn't even write it off, and just brushed it off like we were done talking about it. Fast forward to tonight. I have 2 toddlers, and after dinner, I am exhausted and go to lay down in our bedroom. I am in one of those sleep trances, dozing off, where you're not fully asleep, so you can hear what's going on around you. My husband came back and asked me through the door if I needed a hug. Door was locked to keep the toddlers out. I remember being slightly annoyed and finding it a little off that he woke me up to ask me that. Told him I was fine, just tired, and dozed back off. Fast forward about an hour and he's back at the door, waking me up, asking if I got his text messages, multiple of them, saying I didn't want to talk about what was wrong, that I didn't have to, but he was here to support me with lots of love emojis and gifts. Now I'm confused and he's looking terrified and freaked out, and swears that he heard me crying from the bedroom, from behind the door. He said it was very distinctly my cry, and he thought something was bothering me, that I was keeping it from him. It took me a full half an hour to convince him that I was not crying, to my knowledge. And typically, if I'm crying in my sleep, I will wake up crying. It took me 30 minutes of hardcore convincing him that I was not crying and nothing was wrong, before I think he started to believe me. Now I am definitely awake and we are both freaked out, wondering if it's this house or an entity or what he heard. All I can think is this is how every horror movie starts, and I'm slightly terrified for safety. Would you like my weekly and monthly compilations completely ad-free? If so, check out the link in the description to my Patreon, where for $3 a month, you can get them all completely ad-free. Case file number 1834, written by Mushi Mushi Mushi, Floating Orbs, Hidden Creek Beds, and Ancient Legends. I used to mess around with a friend who had a ranch when I was back in high school, the back part of which was 100 acres of thick brush and rocky ground. To get to it, you had to descend a 150-foot cliff and cross a typically dry creek bed at its base. The Native Americans supposedly used to run buffalo off the edge. The creek bed also serves as a route for poachers, trespassers, and the odd runaway livestock, as any attempt to build a fence across it is inevitably foiled when the next flash flood blows everything out. Although, those same floods would shift the gravel beds and debris to expose fossils in the caliche bedrock that we'd kick out of the ground with our boots when we got bored. The creek path also runs right into the military base next door, where it's rumored the CIA stockpiled weapons for the Bay of Pigs invasion. So one summer, the two of us and another buddy were hunting around in the back, till around 2 in the morning. It was almost a new moon, so it was especially dark. We'd been unsuccessful thus far, and we were walking back to the car parked by the cliffs, without any lights on, so as to not spook something we'd otherwise shoot. As we broke the tree line and the canyon wall came into dim view, my buddy at the front of the line whispered about something strange I couldn't make out. Looking up, I saw what at first seemed like headlights roiling behind the trees along the ridge downstream, but almost just as quickly realized it couldn't be a car as there was only one point of light, and at that distance I should have heard something. The friend in front of me then said, "I don't like that," which I took to mean it might be the poacher the landowner had been finding signs of the past few weeks, walking along the cliffside with a spotlight, before finally realizing that I was out of the loop, because whatever I was looking at was actually 100 feet off the edge of the cliff, floating in mid-air, practically in the middle of the canyon, and much closer than I thought. What I had mistaken for light passing between trees was actually the light irregularly pulsing on and off as it drifted past us in complete silence up the canyon. Reminds me almost of a lightning bug when it is not some 6 inches in diameter, and its flashes are bright enough to illuminate the canyon walls. Sometimes it went so long between brightening up, we thought it had disappeared, before it would appear yet again further down the canyon, slowly making its way somewhere before eventually disappearing around the bend. The three of us were all very familiar with the sort of things one finds in the woods late at night, but not the least bit superstitious. But we watched that thing drift by us for 10 minutes, coming within 100 yards of each other, and not one of us had a freaking clue what it was. We didn't talk about it again after that night. Case file number 1835, written by Gullex, a stump, a drumstick, and a man in old clothes. Not me, but my late father. He was scouting for deer hunting spots on private land in the Lake Rathbun area of southern Iowa. He'd received permission from the landowner to hunt on these grounds, and was informed he was the only one with such permission. In the middle of a bright sunny day, he sat down on a stump in the middle of a clearing to eat his lunch of cold fried chicken. At that moment, he saw a man approach wearing old-timey clothing, including overalls and a wide-brimmed felt hat. He could not see the man's face. As the man walked by, my father said to him, "Hey, do you have permission to be here?" The man ignored him and kept walking. My father shouted, "Hey, do you have permission to be here?" And the man still ignored him. My father, ever the hothead, threw his chicken drumstick at the man, which landed in the grass on the other side. Dad just figured he missed, and he stood up and went after the guy. The man rounded a large oak tree ahead, and when Dad got there, the man was gone. Dad looked on every side of the tree, up all directions. Nowhere. The guy had just vanished. Walking back to his lunch, crunching through the dry leaves and twigs, it occurred to my father that this man made no sound as he passed by. Dad did not tell tall tales. Dad did not drink or do drugs, had no history of mental illness, and was reluctant to repeat his story because he knew what people would think. He never used the word ghost in telling the story and never believed in them, but he insists this happened to him and never could explain it. Case file number 1836, written by Wiglayer, Echoes of an Ancient Night. When I was 25, I was staying with my auntie and uncle in a village they lived in called Bromswell, in rural Suffolk, which is a county in the east of England. They lived just up the road from Sutton Hoo, which is an Anglo-Saxon burial site consisting of numerous burial mounds. One of the kings of the ancient Anglo-Saxon kingdom of East Anglia was buried there. The village is also next to Rendlesham, where people claim to have seen UFOs. At about 1 a.m., I decided to go into the garden for a cigarette. I didn't turn the outside light on as I didn't want to wake anyone up. It was pitch black outside, so much so that I could barely see my hand in front of me. I started to hear what sounded like a horse galloping in the distance. I assumed it was one of the neighbors' horses, but the neighbors who did own horses lived 2 properties away, so it would have been weird for me to have heard them from this distance. The galloping got closer and closer, to the point where I could hear it directly in front of me. I couldn't see anything because of how dark it was, but if I had remained standing in the same position, I would have been trampled. I ran back inside, shut the door behind me, and switched on the outside light. There was nothing outside, no horse or animal of any kind. It was completely quiet again. I briefly wondered if I had just come into contact with the ghost of an Anglo-Saxon warrior from Sutton Hoo. There was another night where I heard scratching on the walls outside of the bedroom I was staying in. I told my cousin at a later point, and she said she experienced the same thing in that room, but she thought it was rabbits trying to burrow under the house. Case file number 1837, written by The Curious Atom, A Siren's Wail in the Silent Place. In 2019, my best friend and I were going through an urban exploring phase. We love the architecture and history, just exploring the different things left in those buildings. It wasn't about ghosts at all, since most of those places have kind, homeless people squatting there anyways. We spent the day at a massive 150-year-old psychiatric hospital. As we were driving home at around 3 p.m., we decided to look for another place along the route. We found a Catholic boys' prep school that had been left since the 60s. It shut down because a boy tragically fell from the second-story balcony. But it had always been a mystery because his body was found so far from the building that it was physically impossible to fall or even be pushed such a distance. The school was located at a public park. It was double fenced off. It was a bright sunny day. We managed to make holes big enough for us to slide under the fences, go through a tiny hole in the basement, and from under the basement we found another hole, leading us under the stage of the school theater and gymnasium. This was 2019, mind you. The interior was remarkably untouched, as if they had just abandoned the school 3 months ago. In most abandoned places, people steal copper, spray graffiti, and break glass. There was always signs of other urban explorers, but in this case, it was like a time capsule. Writing on the chalkboards, old lesson plans with old-timey cursive handwriting. The interior was still clean and beautiful. When we arrived on the second floor, oh boy, let me tell you, the loudest alarm turned on, like those war sirens from World War II. It was incredibly old school. It was deafening. My best friend and I ran out of there immediately, downstairs and through that tiny basement hole. We thought the police were notified and the alarm would sound through the entire park. The moment we got out of the building, silence. We looked out at the playground a bit further from us, and families were playing with no reaction. There was never any alarm. Case file number 1838, written by Their Mystics. The loofah was used, and my mind abused. I went on a trip this weekend. I brought my shampoo, conditioner, body wash, and loofah. I know this because I used them while away. The loofah was wet and smelled like my body wash, so I hung it up in the shower to dry. I remember carrying my body wash back to my room. It was an Airbnb, but couldn't find it the next morning. I was so tired that evening, I could have accidentally missed it and mistakenly thought I had carried it back when I had accidentally left it in the bathroom. So I thought someone took it and I messed up by leaving it in there. It is replaceable, so not a huge deal. I remember using the loofah with my body wash in the Airbnb. I remember struggling to carry my body wash with the shampoo, conditioner, and loofah to the bathroom, so I had to make 2 trips. I remember unpacking these items. I remember packing these items before I left. When I returned home from my trip, my body wash was in my bathroom. Only explanation is that I had 2 and didn't realize it, and someone did take it. But I didn't have 2. It was new, and the first time I'd ever gotten that scent in the body wash. I clearly used it, as the loofah, also new, was wet and smelled like the body wash in question. I had to shave, so I definitely used it, and I smelled great afterwards. Would never use my shampoo, and would have used my face wash, which is unscented, instead. This is very odd. Case file number 1839, written by Pajamas Pancakes, of fake IDs, unexpected connections, and the party keg. I have had several unexplained stories that have happened to me, but this one is pretty good. When I was 19, I was going to school at the University of Minnesota and lived with 5 other girls. One of the girls had a birthday coming up, and we decided we wanted to throw a party at our house. Another girl in the house and I had fake IDs, so we decided we should probably get a couple kegs. At the time, I was super paranoid about getting caught drinking underage. I had already gotten in trouble with the cops before and was worried about my record would impact my future. Those fears certainly didn't get in the way of me enjoying a good party though. Well, there were always rumors circulating, but at the time, there were rumors that the cops were visiting nearby liquor stores to figure out who was buying kegs and would then bust those parties and give everyone citations. So because we were super smart, we decided to drive to nearby Wisconsin and buy kegs from a liquor store just across the state line. Well, when you buy kegs, you have to put down a deposit that you will get back once you return the keg and the tap. They took all the info off my fake ID, then asked for my phone number. I gave the first 6 digits of my actual phone number, but gave 4 completely random digits for the last 4 numbers. We got the kegs home, had the party, and everything was a success. Well, fast forward almost a year later, the empty kegs and the tap were still at the house, because I was the one who actually got the kegs. I didn't put money down for a deposit, and I had a fake ID anyway, with different information, so I didn't make it a priority to return them. Well, I randomly get a call from one of my best friends from high school. She asked me why I use her mom's cell phone number to buy alcohol. Not making the connection right away, I was so incredibly confused. Then I realized what had happened. The random 4 digits I gave to the liquor store was to the number of one of my best friend's moms. I didn't know what her number was and had never even seen it before. The chances are literally 1 in 10,000 for me to have picked her exact number, not to mention matching the first 6 digits. We laughed about it, but I still cannot believe what happened. The freaking odds. Case file 1829. A story of keys, cars, and unseen men. There are so many twists and turns in this story, it's hard to wrap your mind around. Okay, so you're driving, you turn on what you think is a shortcut, and then you wind up home. So, space-time portal then. Okay, but then you find out that you're driving your wife's car, you didn't even have her keys. And then you go back on the road and no one even remembers that encounter. There's something going on here that is well beyond a space-time portal. It's more like they're space-time universal portals, multiverse portals. So you connected to a different universe. You truly were there in not just spirit, but in body and car. But I think for that to work, you have to switch places. So physically switch places with the you in that other universe, And so both of you had this weird story where what you were doing didn't line up with the memory of it. In other people's memories, the conscious mind would still be aware of all of it as you were. But even that isn't a full explanation, because if you switched with the you in a different universe who was driving your wife's car, the keys for that car would be in the ignition of the car. It would be your wife's car with her keys in the car. How does that fit in? Now I'm kind of stumping myself because I don't see how that, it's not going to be a disappearing object phenomenon and then it appeared in the ignition of the car, no, and then disappeared when you came back home. No. There's something more going on here and I don't know what it is. It's like a jumblation of different glitches coalescing together. Highly unusual. Now time for the quote of the day. To me, a lush carpet of pine needles or spongy grass is more welcome than the most luxurious Persian rug. Helen Keller. One is natural and the other is an alteration of nature. Bending nature to our will. I think both have value. Obviously, I don't want to sleep outside in the grass every day, but it is good to go back to your roots every now and again and appreciate where we come from. How much we've improved upon the default state of life. A lot of people will rail against technology or reminisce about the good old times of our ancestors where we were hunter-gatherers. Well, no, we'd die early from a simple cut and infection. We had no medicine. We would starve for days and days until we got to hunt or maybe eat berries. And maybe the berries someone foraged were wrong and you just died from that because it was a lethal berry. Those were not good times. The idea of it might be. But the best we can do now is just go back and touch base with where we came from and just how much we've progressed. In a relatively short amount of time, too, given the nature of the universe and the age of the planet and our species. Hundreds of thousands of years, and in the blink of an eye almost, we made all this progress. So imagine one more blink. How far are we going to be? I can't wait to see. Caissons file 1830. A sticker, Midnight Revelations, and a washer's secret. I fully believe you, and in fact, things like this have happened to me too. I never even connected it in my mind as a glitch, because this happened a while ago. I haven't had an instance where I saw an object that was different looking than I thought it should be. Not in recent memory. This was more in my teenage years. I'd come home after a bike ride, and the desk that I was using was slightly different. One of the bottom rubber pads that braces it would be different, a different color. Instead of black, it would be gray. It's so minor that you just discount it. But then reading this story, my mind is flooded with similar events that occurred to me. And my guess is this kind of stuff happens to a lot of people. The only unusual thing is that it occurred to you at the stroke of midnight and New Year's Eve. Is there some special significance to that? Per the simulation, maybe that's when updates go live? And of course, they can't take the server down, so all updates to this game would be in real time. And that can be done, but it is prone to certain glitches, specifically, so that might be one source of these glitches. When they push updates, maybe at specific intervals at the end of months, maybe there's a universal clock and it just coincides with the New Year's in that year. Could be. I don't remember any specific glitches in the past New Year, in 2023 to 2024. That doesn't mean it couldn't be related. Given the timing of it, it seems like it has to be. But no, you're not crazy. I think what simply happened was a time reversal. The machine probably works flawlessly now because it reverted back in time to where you just bought it just before you peeled off the sticker. Case notes of file 1831. A bracelet's illusion that I can't get past. All the stimuli from the universe was fed into your brain. Those signals, I believe, were real. Your brain interpreted reality in that way, where you heard the beads falling down, the tiny sounds of them bouncing all over the place, and even the feeling of your bracelet breaking, snapping. Those things wouldn't be psychosis or anything like that, just some random bout of psychosis that never happened before or again. No, this was a universal glitch. The stimuli entered your brain, but it wasn't supposed to. Now the question is there some sort of rewind mechanism in short intervals? This wasn't supposed to happen. The bracelet wasn't supposed to break. Maybe a guardian angel or some observer simply pressed rewind. Maybe if it occurs quickly enough, if they catch it quickly enough, they can simply revert it, and the stimuli is still there. They can't easily revert the memory. But the object, yes, that's no problem. Now time for the quote of the day. When buying and selling are controlled by legislation, the first things to be bought and sold are legislators. P.J. O'Rourke. Honestly, I don't need to add much to this one. This is a perfect quote. The only thing I can add is more specific. Regulatory capture. Look it up if you want to be depressed. Caissons file 1832. The power of knowing without a clue. So, you know how people say that the mind of a child is more open to the paranormal, supernatural, to the unproven, to things that just don't necessarily instantly make sense? I think that's true. The mind is not as molded to objective reality, the reality we can conclusively test and repeat in our own experiences. Now, because of that, there are things our subconscious will be more open to feeding into the conscious mind. Now, to be clear, this is not all children. Not all children can predict that someone's going to be at their home when they haven't seen anything related to it. This is literally taking data from the ether, from the jumble of the concurrent running simulation, and somehow translating that. I mean, how they even obtain that information is not clear, the subconscious. That is an ability that very few people, adult or children, have. Is it just a genetic mutation? People have kids and they just happen to have this ability? It is curious though, because if it was just random, why are so many in the scope of how precise this ability would? I mean, it wouldn't just be some random mutation. It would have to be very hyper-specific to cause this and not cause a tumor or just some alteration in the brain that doesn't really do much for you at all, or maybe just heightens your sense of smell or something. This is something truly extraordinary. To be able to predict a future, a probable future, is just, there are no words to describe how powerful that is. So maybe it isn't random. Maybe it is an induced mutation by the developers or observers or guardian angels, whatever you want to call them. And that's the case for so many of these stories that I've read over the years. Yeah, some are actual errors, some are truly random glitches, but so many, I think, are specifically intended, either as a corrective measure or an induced event. I fully believe there are forces above us that we can't directly detect, that are influencing us at the very least. For good or ill, I don't know. Caissons file 1833. When tape disappears and the cry rings clear. So, given your reaction to this, I don't believe it was your dad that just intentionally gaslit you, removed the tape from the modem, and then just stuck it on the floor, or kept it out of sight and then put it on the floor later on to gaslight you, make you think it disappeared when it never did. I mean, it is theoretically possible, but given your reaction, he would have told you if you were crying or heard crying. And the fact that you didn't actually cry, most likely, that you were aware of, but were heard crying later on. That's disturbing. It almost does sound like some sort of spirit that was embodying the area, and that's what your husband heard. And then on another note, more positive, is your husband sounds amazing, trying to support you through something he doesn't really understand, sending you tons of support over text and all that, just checking on you. Even though it disturbed you trying to sleep, he sounds like a good guy, so good job on picking the right man for that. Very good job. Now time for the quote of the day. Nothing is permanent in this wicked world, not even our troubles. Charlie Chaplin. Things are constantly moving and switching and morphing and progressing. Either it's pain or trouble or disease. Now technically it's not entirely true. There are diseases that are permanent, chronic, and take you to the grave. But in general, if you just wait long enough, then your situation will be different, good or bad. The good news is we can directly influence where we go. We're at ocean, we have a rudder, we can kind of steer, we have a small engine, not very powerful, but enough to gently guide us towards where we want to be. It just takes a while, and you might have some rough seas between then and there. So brace yourself for the tumultuous essence of the ocean. But the fact you never really know where you're going to end up is kind of exciting, isn't it? It is for me, anyways. Caissons file 1834. Floating orbs, hidden creek beds, and ancient legends. If I had to pick one thing of what this sounds like, would be some sort of probe. Either alien or perhaps some sort of drone, silent drone. That is the key detail that prevents this from simply be explained by some sort of drone, a patrol system, maybe you're nearby a national park or national forest, or could even be automated by the property owner. But it was silent. To my knowledge, there are no drones that are that silent. There are some that are somewhat quiet, but you'd still hear the fans twirling. So, if this was technological, it would be extremely advanced compared to what we have. Maybe even related to anti-gravity technology. In that case, definitely would be more like an alien. And it makes some sense. If aliens are here, sure, maybe they have advanced sensors on their ships, but they would still want to get close down and try to analyze the world at a higher resolution. But as always, when these stories end as, we never spoke about it again, I mean, that is so unlike me. If I ever saw anything that is so unusual like that, it's the only thing I would talk about for the next year. It's just, you experience the event. Talking about it isn't going to make it not have happened. So talking about it could just help lead towards a possible explanation that makes it less scary. So I don't know. To me, talking about it makes the most sense, but hey, I'm weird. Case notes for file 1835. A stump, a drumstick, and a man in old clothes. Your father sounds like quite the character. Imagine that. He might be the only person in the history of humanity to have tossed a drumstick at a ghost. I mean, literally, he might be the only person to have ever done that. He is more distinguished in that sense than Neil Armstrong walking on the moon. He pierced the essence of a ghost with chicken. So strange sometimes these stories, but I love it. Okay, so it's 1836. Echoes of an Ancient Night. So this would be evidence that indicates that yes, animals, at least some of them, do have spirits. This was the echo of a horse that was galloping, maybe killed in that area before, and this was just the echo repeating of it. I don't think you would have been trampled if you had remained there. I don't think it was real in the physical sense. It was just hearing it, the essence, the small tiny fragment left over by this living being. One thing I think we could actually test, if echoes are repeating loops of the instance in life that is tethering the spirit, the fragment, to the world, then you can test that. You can apply the scientific method. If anyone ever experiences what they think is a ghost in their home or outside or somewhere that they have access to, install a camera and just record every day and see if it ever repeats. Usually loops are like on a yearly basis, sometimes quicker, maybe a bit slower sometimes, but it might be possible to obtain direct evidence. Now, sometimes spirits do mess with electromagnetic forces in the area, which could disturb the camera, but even then, that would be kind of evidence. If it's on a specific time, and the camera always goes out or fuzzies out at a specific time, even if it sees nothing, that is still, to some extent, evidence. If it's repeatable. That's the key. You have to test and repeat and repeat. So if that ever happens to you, install a camera and see what happens. Now time for the joke of the day. My kid was misbehaving all morning, so I told him to go get a Switch so I can teach him a lesson. I then proceeded to kick his butt in Mario Kart. If you don't get it, the Switch is a video game console. So that's what he meant. Proper. I mean, that'd be good discipline. You're establishing the hierarchy of who's in charge and who isn't by dominating him in video games. Far better than physical domination. That's the old school style that I don't agree with. Peaceful parenting all the way. Unless it's in video games, then you can brutalize them. That's fine. Okay, so let's file 1837. A siren's wail in a silent place. Well, that's a question. Can spirits induce stimuli into the mind of someone that's nearby? I think this would be pretty solid evidence that they can. There was never any alarm. It was simply a spirit that was lingering there and wanted you to leave. And a good way to do that is just to sound a giant alarm, but only in your head. It never actually happened. And maybe that is why it's so well preserved, because a spirit doesn't want anything to be moved or touched or damaged. So anytime an urban spelunker goes by to investigate or graffiti the place, bam, alarm system goes off. Only in their mind, though. It's a pretty strong defense mechanism, actually. Pretty cool. Any animal has a defense mechanism. Porcupines have spikes, a bear has its claws, and spirits, sometimes, have alarms. Question 1838. The loofah was used and my mind was abused. So yeah, this is just a classic case of inanimate objects being disappeared, switched, twisted, morphed, returned, duplicated. You name it, anything can happen to inanimate matter. To some extent, even living matter, but more so inanimate matter. Any objects we create are subject to the whims of the universe, the chaos therein, and sometimes forces above us that are conscious and want to influence us in some way. Question 1839. Of fake IDs, unexpected connections, and the party keg. Yeah, this is definitely weird. To guess the last 4 digits, is that random? Yes, theoretically it's possible. Is that the probable explanation? No, definitely not. Your mind was somehow connected to that phone number. Why though? Is that really just random? Your subconscious just happened to pick up that information, her last 4 digits, for no apparent reason, and then relayed it to your conscious mind as the random number to pick. Why? Why? I'm always stuck on the why. There has to be a purpose that giving her number to the store somehow influenced your life later on. This is not random. I refuse to believe this is random. So if it isn't random, someone intended for you to directly use this number for a specific purpose. We just can't know what it is. Sometimes, maybe it could be such a small, tiny alteration. Just receiving that call. Maybe this opens your mind to accepting different ideas. Could be as simple as that. Now time for the joke of the day. Growing up, my dad always said, gallons, quarts, pints, and cups. You know what it really did? It spoke volumes to me. These jokes are getting so absurdly corny, but I can't stop. I'll never stop. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.